Good day everyone, especially to you Mr. Aaron-Pagulayan. Today we will discuss with Mr. Fiegalan the given topic that were assigned to us. It is all about the Asian world. Before I proceed to my presentation, I will read first the learning objectives of our topic. After the discussion, the students should be able to first is learn and understand dynasties that had emerged in Asia and how affect the political affairs of the contemporary Asia. The second is contextualize the contribution of Asia in different disciplines including literature and science. The third is understand the geographical and cultural differences or identities of every nation in Asian continent. And lastly, understand different political dynasties that emerge in Asia and how it affect the current political affairs of each country. And to the next slide is material to be used. Chapter 8, The Asian World, 400 to 1500. Topic. And the first part is China reunified. Letter 8, we have three dynasties. And number 1 is Shu dynasties. Number 2 is the Tang dynasties. And the number 3 is the Song dynasties. The part 2 is all about the Mongols and China. Letter A is the Mongols. Letter B, religion and the government. Letter C, a golden and age and in literature of art. And let us now proceed to the part 3, which is all about early Japan and Korea. Letter A, early Japan. Letter B, life in early Japan. And letter C, the emergence of Korea. And to the part 4, we discuss all about the India after the Guptas, which is under this, we have the impact of religion. Letter B, India society and the culture. And lastly, let's go into the part 5, which is all about the civilization of the Southeast Asia. And under this, we have three that we will discuss later. The first is the formation of states. The second is the impact of geography. And the third is life of the Southeast Asia.
China reunified. In 581, the Sui dynasty succeeded in unifying China for the first time. In hundreds of years, over the next several centuries, with only a brief period of disorder in 900s, a series of three dynasties would bring progress and stability to China. During this period, China would invent black printing and gunpowder, participate in increased foreign trade, and reinstitute a merit-based system of civil service. So, after ng fall of Han Dynasty, may tatlong dynasty nag-emerge sa China na nag-bring ng prosperity at inayos nila ang China again from chaos. So, ang unang dynasty na nag-emerge sa China is itong ang Sui dynasty. The Han dynasty came at the end in 220 and China fell into chaos. For the next 300 years, the Chinese suffered through disorder and civil war. Then in 581, a new Chinese empire was set up under a dynasty known as the Sui. The Sui dynasty, 581 to 618, did not last long, but it managed to unify China once again under the emperor's authority. So, ang great contribution ng Sui dynasty ay ang pagpapatapos ng Grand Canal. So, ang Grand Canal was built to link two major rivers, the north and south, making it easier to ship rice from south to north. So, Sui dynasty rose after the fall of Han dynasty and unified China again. So, ang ruler at namuno during this dynasty is si Su Yangdi, emperor who completed the Grand Canal built to link two great rivers of China, Wanghe and Changjiang rivers from north to south. Su Yangdi was a cruel ruler and used forced labor to build the Grand Canal. This practice together with high taxes, his extravagant and luxurious lifestyle, and military failures caused a rebellion. So sinasabing yung building the canal was a huge project. It took over 6 years of hard work by millions of laborers. The Emperor Yang was a tyrant. He forced millions of farmers to work on canal. Many of them died during the construction. However, when the canal was finally completed in 909 AD, China had new waterway that would enrich the countries for hundreds of years to come. And then, dahil din sa pagsisingil niya ng mataas na taxes at maling pamumuno at maling pag-rules during that time, nag-cause ito ng maraming failures at naging dahilan ng rebellion, which is yun yung naging bunga upang matapos yung kanyang pamumuno at ang kanyang pagkamatay. The emperor was murdered and his dynasty come to an end. A new dynasty, the Tang dynasty, soon emerged. It would last for almost 300 years, from 618 to 900. The early Tang rulers began their reigns by instituting reforms, as rulers often did in the early days of new dynasties. They restored civil service examination from earlier times to serve as a cheap methods of recruiting officials. Tang rulers worked hard to create more stable economy by giving land to the peasants and breaking up the power of aristocrats. So during Tang Dynasty, na-restore nila ang civil examination to serve methods para makapag-recruit sila ng mga official para sa bureaucracy. And also, during Tang Dynasty, binigyan nila ng lupa yung mga peasants at sinira nila yung power of aristocrats. Tang Xuanzang is one of the rulers who was unable to prevent plotting and government corruption within Tang Dynasty. So si Tang Xuanzang ay isa sa mga namuno at dahil nga maraming gustong mangurap at magkaroon ng siraan ng government during that dynasty, hindi na kayanan ni Tang Xuanzang ang ganitong sitwasyon. So during the 8th century, Tang Dynasty weakened and became prey to rebellion. Tang rulers hired a group of people called Uyghurs to protect the dynasty. Continued unrest, however, led to collapse of Tang rule in 907. So, nag-hire itong Tang dynasty dahil nga magulo yung kanilang government situation. Dahil nga maraming kurap, hindi kaya ng kanilang rulers, nag-recruit sila ng tinawag nilang Uyghurs. A northern tribal group of Turkic-speaking people hired to fight for Tang Dynasty. Pero, hinire nila, hindi rin naman naging successful at hindi rin naprotektahan at tuluyan nag-collapse ang Tang Dynasty. In 960, a new dynasty known as the Song rose to power. The Song ruled during period of economic prosperity and cultural achievement from 960 to 1279. From the start, however, the Song also experienced problems, especially from northern neighbors. So, habang nung pagka-fall ng Tang Dynasty, itong Song Dynasty naman ang nag-rule. So, hindi rin naging maganda yung, parang hindi rin sila masyadong naging tahimik because nga, may yung kanilang neighboring na mga dynasty siguro, ay masyado silang nababother. These groups crossed into northern China and occupied large part of Chinese territory. So yun nga, nagkaroon ng mga pananakop at itong mga ibang dinastiya, mga tribes, ay pinasok nila at sinakop nila yung malaking part ng Chinese territory. Because of this threat, Song rulers were forced to move an imperial court farther south. Song Dynasty which arises after the fall of Tang Dynasty. So, Hangzhou is the capital of Song Dynasty, is one of the largest and richest city of Song Empire. Song government. So, ang government during Song Dynasty is monarchy with bureaucracy. Government also weakened, the aristocrats giving land back to peasants. The Song Dynasty and the Mongols. The Song Dynasty could never overcome the challenge from the north. During the 1200s, the Mongols, a nomadic people from Gobi, carried out wars of conquest and built a vast empire within 70 years. They controlled all China, as well as the Mongols overthrew the Song and created a new dynasty in China. So, during the time, nagawa may nabuong isang empire at sinasabing ito yung pinaka malakas at pinakamalaking empire sa buong mundo, which is yung nabuo nga sa China. Pero Mongol people sila. The Song government worked to weaken the power of the large land holders and to help poor peasants obtain their own lands. They return efforts and improve farming techniques to lead abundance of food in Chinese cities. Technological development added new products and stimulated trade. During the Tang Dynasty, for example, the Chinese began to mix steel by mixing cast iron, wrought iron in a blast furnace heated by burning coal. The steel was used to make swords and siklets. The introduction of cotton made it possible to make new kinds of clothes. Song's economy, farming, trading, sales, yun nga. Parang during this dynasty, mas nag-focus sila on trading products at paggagawa ng mga swords, tapos paggawa ng mga pottery, at yun, nakikipag-trade rin, nakikipagkalakal sila. Kasi yung mga silk, tapos naka-invent sila ng mga bagong, like, yung naka-invent sila ng cotton para makapagawa ng bagong product at maging sa, sa pangkasuotan. Pang technology, cast iron which made from swords, introduction of cotton, gunpowder which is used to make explosive and primitive flamethrower. So during this dynasty, nakagawa sila ng, based on my research, nakapagawa sila ng fireworks, tapos soon na-invent nila din ito na gawing weapon, at parang naging itong parang flamethrower, yung parang parang siya ano ng apoy. Chinese society, most significant about Chinese society was the rise of landed gentry. This group controlled much of the land, at the same time produced mass of the candidates for the civil service. The scholar gentry, as this class was known, replaced the old landed aristocracy as a political and economic elite of Chinese society. Marco Polo. So Marco Polo is an Italian merchant who traveled the Song capital of Hangzhou. So sinabi ni Marco Polo na dinescribe niya na Hangzhou is the richest place in the world. Parang kinompare niya ito sa Eurasian, which is very abundant, rich, and basta mayaman siya. Dinescribe ni Marco Polo. Scholar gentry. So replace the old landed aristocracy and become political and economic elite Chinese society. So, ang scholar gentry, base sa na-research ko, is sila yung parang parang isa silang government, part of government, na sa mga, when it comes in political and economic sa China. As in other parts of the world, female children were considered less desirable than male children. In times of famine, female infants might be killed if there was not enough food to feed the whole family. When married, she became a part of her husband's family. In addition, a girl's parents were expected to provide dowry to her husbands when married. Poor families often sold their daughters to wealthy merchants. So during that time, yung mga babae ay parang nagiging kapalit sa yaman at inagamit ito para makakuha ng pera at inabayad niya to sa lalaki, which is ang tawag dito ay dowry. For example, may gusto kang isang babae, pero ang kapalit nun, bibigyan mo ng yaman yung family ng girl para maging asawa mo siya. Tapos, during that time, pag hindi mo kaya mapakain at mahirap ka lang at may anak na babae ang iyong family, is the female infants might be killed if there was not enough food to feed the whole family. Few Chinese women had any power. An exception was Wu Zhao. So, si Wu Zhao is an empress, the first empress during Tang Dynasty. So, si Wu Zhao is known for her ruthless. She was a strong leader. Matalino rin siya. She was the first ruler to give graduates of civil service examination the highest government position. She also formed an alliance with Korea and lowered taxes. So, ang isa sa mga binakang magandang ginawa for me ni Wu Zhao is in-step out niya yung karapatan ng mga babae. Binigyan niya ng mga rights and privileges during Tang Dynasty. So, yung mga babae noon ay allowed to join in sports such as horseback riding and polo, and activities such as dancing and playing music. Most marriages were arranged, and a woman was permitted to marry only once in her lifetime. So, isa pa din is yung during the Song Dynasty is yung practicing of foot binding became popular among upper class women. Foot binding, which made feet a natural small permanently deformed woman's feet, caused great pain and often women to stand or walk without assistant. So, during that time, ang standard ng pagiging maganda sa kanila is kapag maliit yung paa. And it's a sign ng social class. For example, naka-put bind ka, parang sa tingin nila may mataas yung katayuan mo sa lipunan, may kaya ka. A woman's willingness to bind her feet was considered a sign of her virtue. On the other hand, two-thirds of aristocratic women with the Song Dynasty were literate and well-educated. Some women benefited from the new inheritance rights. If there was no male heir, the state could pass to a woman in the family. Mongols and China. The Mongols were pastoral people from the region of modern-day Mongolia who were organized loosely into clans. Temujin, born during the 11,060s, gradually unified the Mongols in 1206. He was elected Genghis Khan, strong ruler, at the massive meetings somewhere in Gobi. From that time on, he developed himself to conquest. The Mongols brought much of the Eurasian landmass under a single rule, creating the largest land empire in history. To rule the new Mongol Empire, Genghis Khan set up a capital city at Karakorum. Mongol armies traveled to both the west and to the east. Some went far as Central Europe. So, yung Mongol is much of Eurasian. Mas malaki siya sa Eurasian. And tinawag siyang large land empire in history sa pamumuno ni Genghis Khan. The Mongols and China. Mongols were pastoral people who were organized loosely into clans. So, ang namuno dito is si Genghis Khan. Means strong ruler. Genghis Khan was the founder and the first great Khan of the Mongol Empire, which became the largest contiguous empire in history. After his death, he became to power by uniting many of the nomadic tribes of Northeast Asia. Temujin. So, Temujin is yung original name ni Genghis Khan. So, Temujin unified the Mongols, creating the largest land empire in history. After the death of Genghis Khan in 1227, the empire began to change. Following Mongol custom upon the death of ruling Khan, his heirs divided the territory. The one united empire Genghis Khan was thus split into several separated territories called Khanates, each under the rule of one of his sons. It may be the death of Genghis Khan kept the Mongols from attacking Western Europe. In 1231, the Mongols attacked Persia and then defeated the Abbasids and Baghdad in 1258. Mongol forces attacked the Song dynasty in China in 1260s. So, sa pagkamatay ni Genghis Khan, na-divide ang empire at may mga nabago sa pamumuno ng kanyang anak. At nahati ito sa apat na empire. Ang reason kung bakit nahati ang empire is when Khan died in 1259, the siege of Dabu Castle with no declared successor participating in fighting between members of Tuli family, line of title of Kagan, that escalated into Tolid civil war. So, the reason kung bakit siya nahati is para mas mapalawak yung kanilang influence at yung kanilang nasasakupan. Marami silang mga nilabanan, like isa sa mga natalo nila is yung Song dynasty in China in 1260s. Kublai Khan. Kublai Khan is grandson of Genghis Khan, conquered the Song and established a new Chinese dynasty called Yuan dynasty. So si Kublai Khan yung namuno during ng pananakop nila at natalo nila yung Song dynasty in China. At nagbuo rin siya ng dynasty na tinawag na Yuan Dynasty. Exchange of technology, China and Mongols. In their attack on the Chinese, the Mongols encountered the use of gunpowder and the fire lance. By the end of the 13th century, the fire lance had evolved into much more effective gun cannon. By each early 14th century, foreign employees by Mongols rule in China had introduced the use of gunpowder in firearms in Europe. So, habang nagatagal, yung mga na-invent nila na mga like gunpowder, yung fireworks, mga fire lance, is naging ginamit nila para sa into weapon. One of the, gaya nung isa sa mga pinakang great contribution ng, hindi ko lang kung sa Tang Dynasty ba, is which is the wood block printing. So yung wood block printing na yun is used to print the Diamond Sutra. So yung Diamond Sutra is yun yung pinaka earliest printed text. Unknown printing date is 868. So yung pinakang kauna-unahang na print, wood block print, gamit yung wood block print. The Mongol dynasty eventually fell victim at the same problems that had plagued other dynasties. Too much spending of foreign conquests, corruption at court, and growing internal instability. In 1368, Su Yuanzong put together an army and began a new dynasty known as Ming Dynasty. So gaya ng ibang dynasty, ito ding Mongol dynasty is nagkaroon ng mga problem, political, government, social issues. Kaya itong si Su Yuanzong ay nagawa siya ng army para labanan itong ganitong sitwasyon. Decentralization within the Mongol. Fell victim of corruption, too much spending of foreign conquests. Yu Zhuanzhuang, the son of peasant, who put together an army and did Mongol dynasty and set up a new dynasty, the Ming Dynasty. So by the time Mongols established their dynasty in China, religious preferences in Chinese court had undergone the number of changes. Confucian principle became the basis of Chinese government during the Han Dynasty. So, isa sa mga naging principle ng kanilang government is yung Confucianism. By that time, the Su and the Tang dynasties, Buddhism and Taoism rivaled in influence of Confucianism. During the Song Dynasty, however, Confucian ideas re-emerged in the new form. Once again, Confucianism became the dominant at court, a position retained until the early 20th centuries, and Buddhism was brought in China in the 1st century AD by merchants and missionaries from India. So, pinakaging base ng kanilang government during Han Dynasty is yung Confucian principle. Buddhism, a philosophy which was introduced by China merchants and missionaries from India. Decline of Buddhism in China. The growing popularity of Buddhism continued into early years of Tang Dynasty. Early Tang rules lent their support to Buddhist monasteries who were set up throughout the country. Buddhists became advisors and imperial court. Ultimately, through Buddhism, lost favor at the court was increasingly subject to attack. So during that time, nawalan masyado ng support ang Buddhism from the state. Parang nawawala yung kanilang support sa Buddhism. But na-criticize ang Buddhism for being a foreign religion, like Christian monasteries in Europe during the Middle Ages. Neo-Confucianism. So, ang Neo-Confucianism is a philosophy which teaches that the world is real, not an illusion, and that fulfillment comes not from withdrawal, but participation in the world. So, ang Neo-Confucianism ay parang inaturo nito na ang totoo lahat na nakikita natin, hindi ito illusion. We're living in a real world, in real life. Goal of Neo-Confucianism. Goal is to teach union with supreme ultimate God by following moral principles that rule. Golden Age in literature and art. The period between the Tang and Ming dynasties was in many ways great age of Chinese literature. So yun nga, dahil nga doon sa wood block printing, mas lalong nag-emerge ang literature and art in Chinese and Mongol dynasty. The invention of printing during Tang Dynasty helped to make literature more readily available and more popular. Art to flourish during this period. It was poetry, above all, the Chinese this time best expressed their literally and talents. The Tang Dynasty is viewed as the great age of poetry in China. At least 48 poems were written by 2,200 authors. The invention of printing during the Tang Dynasty helped to make literature more readily. Yes. Libu were the most popular poets during the Tang Dynasty. Libo wrote on Taoist ideals. Du Fu wrote on social injustice and plight of the poor. Bale sa nabasa ko, yung Du Fu is parang ang mostly ang content niya is about social injustice, yung mga crimes, yung mga discrimination sa society. Painting. During the Song and Mongol dynasty, landscape painting teaches the high point was influenced by Taoism. So, yung mga paintings during Song and Mongol dynasty is influenced ng Taoism. Portrayal. Most of Chinese artists tried to reveal the hidden forms of the landscape rather than depicting the realistic shape of a specific mountain. For example, they tried to portray the idea of mountain. Empty spaces were left in the paintings because in the Taoist vision, one cannot know the whole truth. Like yung nakikita nyo sa painting, parang pag-drawing sila ng mga mountains, parang hindi nila drawing yung mismong nakikita natin na ganun na mountain, but nabigyan nila ng ibang idea. Pas makikita para so pag nakita ng ibang tao, makita ng mga tao, malalaman nila kung ano yung truth, kung anong hidden doon sa painting na yon. So, next to painting and creative accomplishment was field of ceramics. In particular, Tang artisan perfect the making of porcelain, ceramic made of fine baked clay at very high temperatures. The technique for making porcelain did not reach Europe until the 18th century. Porcelain, Tang artisan perfect the making of porcelain, a ceramic made of fine clay baked very high temperature. So, yung porcelain is isa sa mga perfect na nagawang na contribute ng Tang artisans. Yun ay ina-bake nila, gamit nila itong pantry, truk sa pagkalakal, inabenta sa ibang lugar.
So let us now proceed to the part 3, which is early Japan and Korea. So in early Japan was unified by a noble family that gave rise to a line of the emperors. Over time, power passed by from the hands of the emperor, the power aristocratic family, then the military leaders called shoguns. So shoguns is a title that granted by the emperor to the country or the top military commander. So this military officer steadily gained more influence. Also, the court officials and the ultimately sized church of the internation. Also, shoguns is the one of who sent troops to the fight from the Mughals. So at the end of the early Japan, centralized power disappeared altogether with Korea history. During this period is one of the struggle for independence against the neighboring of the Chinese. So the geography about the Japan is it is a large group of islands located off the Asian mainland. The second is the islands of Japan are really the tops of the mountains that covers all of the islands. Because of that, the mountains were difficult to live in, so most of the people lived on flat coastal plains near in the sea. The next is early Japan. In the 1st century AD, the ancestor Japanese settled in the Yamato Plain near the current city of Osaka and the Kyoto. Society was made of the clans. Society received little influence from the rest of the Asia. In 500s, Japanese leaders started sending people to China and Korea to learn more about their culture. So in early Japan, their society, in the first century, the ancestor of the Japanese settled in the Yamato Plain, which is it is near to the modern cities of the Osaka and the Kyoto. So in this early, their society was made of the clans. So these clans was a people were in divided between the small in aristocratic class or the rulers. So ito yung pamilya kung saan mas kilala sila or ito yung mayayaman dito sa isang lugar na ito. So it isn't included of the large population like rice farmers, artisans, and the household servants. So also in Japanese leaders they are sending to China and Korea because they want to learn about their culture, and also the Confucianism, to how to handle this or use this, and also their religion, especially Buddhism, because this is the culture of the Japanese at early Japan period. So let us now proceed to the next, which is all about their language. So Japan borrowed Chinese as a written language. Chinese character represent Japanese sound. Um, Chinese was the official language of all Japan's government. So when it comes to the religion and the philosophy of the early Japan, Shinto is a Japan real traditional religion. Shinto is a workshop of nature and the spirit called kami. Also, Shinto is originated from Japan, and this is the traditional religion. The history of Shinto is, um, in that period, people is when they entering in Shinto shrine, people walk through the gate called the Tore. This Tore marked as the boundary of the shrine and the other sacred shrine site. And over time past, it became a symbol of the Shinto Japan and the Asian religion. So also Shinto believes that everything in nature has kami. So it is built shrines to the kami, and they ask the spirit to bless them. Prince Shotoko. Prince Shotoko was a regent, a person who rules a country for someone who isn't able to rule. Also, he sent scholars to China and they brought back Confucianism. Prince Shotoko also was a Buddhist. He worked to make Buddhism popular in Japan. So Prince Shotoko, he is wanted a centralized government under the supreme ruler, and his objective is to limit the power of the aristocrats and enhance the Yamato rulers. So for his own authority. So as the result, ito ay naging resulta ng wherein the rulers was portrayed as the divine figure and the symbol of the Japanese nation. So also, Prince Shotoku spread the Buddhism by writing commentaries and building a beautiful temple in the early Japan. So let us now proceed to the next, which is the government of the early Japan. So from the government of early Japan, under these villages in Japan were ruled by a clan chiefs. Yamamoto's a clan become a powerful by conquering other clans. Japan Emperor gained a little power. So in government, a clan who is the Yamamoto's is a become a powerful by conquering their clans. They called themselves as Emperor of Japan. With that, Prince Sutoku wanted Japan emperors to be the powerful like China, but the clans didn't agree with that, with Prince Shitoku wanted, because of that, ito ang naging dahilan kung bakit ngayon ang naging resulta nito is Japan Emperor gained a little power. Because of that, kasi hindi nila sinunod yung gusto ni Prince Shitoku, na gusto niya na emperor ay maging powerful na katulad ng China, sa kagustuhan ng Yamamoto's clan, na sila yung mas maging um, masusunod, hindi nila pinaniwalaan si Prince Shotoko, so that the result is the emperor gain a little power, not like in China. So let us now proceed to the culture of early Japan. Vulgar gossip, the tale of Genji, Murasaki Shikibu, the author of the tale of Genji. So from the culture of the Japan, vulgar gossip is a rude behavior of Japan. Because of using Japan, instead of using finger to point out something, so they are use their hand gently with for what they like to point out. So that's the way of early Japan, in their culture that time. So when it comes to the tale of the Genji, so this is from the 9th and 12th century. The tale of Genji produced writer to prose fiction in Japanese. So this fiction, who is the author, is a Murasaki Shikibu. So this considered, and also in the early Japan, this tale, the tale of the Genji, considered as the word first novel in the Heian period. So on the Heian period. So let us now proceed to the emergence of the Korea. Relatively mountainous, Korea introduced Buddhism to Japan. In 109 BC, under the Han Dynasty, Chinese influence gradually separated into three kingdoms, which is the Goguryeo, the north, Peiki, the southwest, and the Silya is the southeast. So, kingdoms unified, and in 10th century, Koryo is a new dynasty. So, in this Korea history, 109 BC under the Han Dynasty, China's influence gradually separated into three kingdoms, which is the Goguryeo, and the north is a Peiki in the southwest, and the Silya is the southeast. So, in this kingdom, it is unified, and the Korea divided it kingdom. So, each kingdom was governed with a hereditary monarch and the powerful aristocratic family. So, like nasabi ko nung una, which is the aristocratic family, which is the rulers with a high, or they have high position. So, they had two government, which is the communist, which is it is the north, and the anti-communist is the south. So, from the Koryo dynasty in the 10th century, Koryo dynasty is the root of the modern world in Korea. So, and also this kingdom adopted Chinese political constitution in order to unify their territory, and it to remain this power. Um, for that, the next slide is the module rule under the emergence of Korea. Module rule is the tributary, or the Kanbalik, suffering for Koreans, bullship, and the conquer Japan. And the next is the independence. The language Hangul created the spoken language, break from Chinese influence, and also the new capital of the Korea now is the Seoul. So from the next is the feudal system. So under the emergence of Korea, there's have the feudal system, which is feudalism. So in this, king, nobles, or the peasant come enslaved. So as you can see in that picture, you can see the feudal system in this. So when the in this picture, which is that tenants are given their land to return their loyalty and the service to the landowner. So we have to the part 4, which is the India after the Guptas. So India after the Guptas, empire collapse, which is the Muslim conquerors moved into the China, eventually taking control of the nearly of all the subcontinent. Majority of them are of their population in India was remain Hindu, and which is the often lead to have attention with the open conflict in the India and the Guptas. So the next slide is the impact of religion. So the school of Theravada which is the teaching of the elders. Mahayana, made of the money, many schools are the interpretation of the fundamental human beliefs, values, and ideals, not only those from the Buddhist teaching. So, in the impact of religion, Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, all influence the development of the India. So, next is the lost its popularity in the Indian society. Buddhism school found success outside the India, and the monks took the teaching in China, Korea, South, Southeast Asia, and Japan. So from the Timur Link is a Turkic conqueror in 1330s and 1405. So he is a shrewd warrior, and also he built an empire that stretched from modern day from Iran, India, and from the Arabian Sea and the modern day of the Kazakhstan. And with this, as you can see, the Indian society and the culture. So the ruling class of this, and the main idea of the Indian society is the ruling class of India was made of the Muslim, but some of the members of Hindu population also prospered. The rich culture in India was reflected in its art, literature, architecture, and technological advances. So, as you can see in the blocks, the life of the Gupta India, they have a growth trade and the sea trade. So, from the growth of trade, Indian civilization flourished during Gupta Empire. Trade increased, economy strengthened, cities and prospered. Overland routes like the Silk Roads link India and other markets. And the last is Indian merchants traded ivory, cashmere, cotton spices for Chinese silk, Roman ceramics. From the sea trade, Gupta, Tamil kingdoms in southern of India traded actively by sea. Indian sailors used seasonal winds to reach foreign markets across the Arabian Sea. Sea trade also between India and Southeast Asia, and the last is they played key roles in cultural diffusion of the Indian culture. The next is the empire of China in India, daily life and the simple life. So in daily life, growth of trade strengthened economy. Gupta's empire cities, and they reflect prosperity. Use of money become more common, and new group of bankers, money lenders emerge. Luxury, pleasure of urban rich employed music, poetry, and art. From the simple lives, most Gupta people lead simple lives in the small villages. Majority of villages dwellers farmer. Most villages self-sufficient, but trade between villages occurred. People from different villages got together for religious festival and other events. So from the next slide is the life of the Gupta India. We have four under the life of the Gupta India. We have the four components, which is the first is the social control, legal codes, gender, and law menu. So from the social control, most people in ancient India belong to specific caste. Castes determine jobs, interaction with others. Number grow develop rules. From the legal codes is legal codes also define people rules. Law of Manu complied between 200 BC to AD to 200. Define proper behavior. From the gender is the also shaped Indian society. Men had more rights than women. So, in this period pala, meron din na discrimination with men and women. So, mas nadidiscriminate dito yung mas babae. Like, siguro mas nangyayari ito ngayon, pero dito sa Pilipinas is, hindi na siya. Yes. The next is the patriarchal society similar to China. From the last is the law of Manu. A female child subject to father, female youth to husband. Men expected the treat woman with respect. Abused woman could live. The next is the Gupta Golden Age. So like the Han period in China, the Gupta period was a golden age of the cultural and the scientific architecture. So as I can said earlier, um, we have the literature. Excuse me. As Sanskrit literature, many great workers created during Gupta period. One of the greatest writer is Kalidasa. So it is under this is we have a poet, playwright, word plays from the royal court. Sakuntala it is the most famous. So play combines myth, humor, court life, and the lyric poetry. So from and the other part is the Pankantran Pankatantra. So another popular work of this period, five books collection of the stories meant to teach lesson, the good of the bad and given schemes. So wise thought most of the brilliant and provide a mongoose meal and a warning of the thing and the before acting. The next slide is the art of architecture in the Indian society and culture. So we have the religious, Buddhist temples, and also the most spectacular architecture. So from the next is the also we have great works of art and the temple paintings and the statues. So let us now proceed to the last part, which is part 5, the civilization of the Southeast Asia. So from the civilization of the Southeast Asia, unlike most of the other regions of Asia, Southeast Asia was never unified under a single government, largely due to these formidable geographic barriers. Therefore, the history of the Southeast Asia tells of the competition and the interaction between the several and the small states. So, from the Southeast Asia, it is divided into two parts, which is the mainland Southeast Asia and the island Southeast Asia. So, from the mainland, modern nation of the Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, Vietnam, and other part of the Malaysia. From the islands Southeast Asia is the Sumatra, Borneo, Java, and also the rest of the Malaysia, Brunei, East Timor, Indonesia, Philippines, and also the last is the Singapore. So, influence of the China Asia. We have the India and the China ship, and the development of geography and the trade. So from the geography of the civilization of the Southeast Asia, we have the several rivers flow south on mainland, valley deltas of the rivers supported for farming and the home early civilization. With that, the ranges of the fertile rivers, valleys that run to southerly and the southeasterly direction. So, the people living in the river valleys were often cut off from one another because they had limited contact with the people living because in the mountain. So, separating rivers, rich mountain, limited contact among the people. And then islands surrounded by seas, streets provided source of food, traveled through trade routes. So, with that, from the next slide, trade. Southeast Asia waterways main trade routes between India and the China. Two most important is the Malacca Strait between the Malay Peninsula, Sumatra Strait between the Sumatra or the Java. It is control of these other important trade routes brought health power. So from when it comes to the winds, monsoon seasonal winds share trade. Winds blow northeast in summer and from the winter is the southwest. So in Southeast Asia, port cities become the more important in the economic center. And from the sea trade in the Southeast Asia, by AD 100, Indian merchants had begun prosperous trade in the Southeast Asia. Overland trade routes through Central Asia more dangerous after fall in the Han Dynasty in 2020. So seaborne trade between China and India increased. Um, Traders passed through Southeast Asia to exchange goods and their local products. The next is the um, early kingdom and empire. So under this kingdom and empire, we have the Pagan kingdom. So which is the Anawatra successor, which is the successor supported Theravada Buddhism that builds thousands of the Buddhist temples. So under the and also the pagans become center of the Buddhist learning. So in 1287, um, Kublai Khan's Mongols demanded tribute from Pagan. So king refused and attract it by crush. Um, and also one of the king's own sons killed him. Then agreed to pay tribute to the Mongols. So the Pagans survived but lost their power. Today's Pagan Myanmar people is considered as the Pagan classical age, the history of the culture in the civilization of the Southeast Asia. The next is Indian influence. So we have in the under the civilization of the Southeast Asia, we have Indian influence, which is it is adopted by Hindu, Buddhist belief rules of the god, and also empire capital city or the Angkor symbolship of Hindu universe, temple and its center, and empire grow prosperous from rice farming. So in Indian influence, they have rice farming also. They built irrigation system covering 12.5 million acres, grow several crops per year. So let's proceed to the Khmer Empire. So from this empire, powerful Khmer Empire arose southeast of Pagan. Early 800s, Khmer people began to conquer kingdoms around them, and they also built a great empire. An empire reached a height between 850 and 1250. So it is controlled much from the Southeast Asia mainland. So the next is the expensive building project. Invaders contributed to the empire decline. So from the trading of the kingdoms, several developed on island and the Southeast Asia. The next is the kingdom of Salyandra of Java flourished 750 to 850. And the next is the relied in this kingdom, they relied on the agriculture and the trade. Um, so when it comes to the Salyandro kingdom, we have they adopted Mahayana Buddhism. So later, earlier I discussed it, the Mahayana Buddhism, known as the more expressive Buddhist art and the architecture. So the next is the Borobudur. Borobudur monument with a terrace level is the most famous monument in the Salyandra kingdom. So from the next is we have the another kingdom is the Srivijaya. So Srivijaya's kingdom is a wealthy empire of the Sumatra flourished in 600s to 1200. So it is gained wealth from control of the overseas trade through the Malacca and the Sondan trade. So under this pala is the mas focus sila sa overseas trade. They also the Buddhist Learning Center. From the next is the we will also discuss the Vietnam. So from the rebellion of the Vietnam, we have the rebellion, the independence, and also the Dalbate. So from this, the rebellion is AD 39. One of the famous Vietnamese rebellions took place. Two sisters, which is named Trong Truc and the Trung So Rei's army briefly dropped Chinese out, and also Chinese Sun regained control, sister remain heroes in Vietnam today. So from the independence, early 900s fall in the China Tang dynasty provide Vietnamese another chance to independence, this time successful. So from the 939, they established independent kingdom in what is now northern Vietnam. So from the Dal Bet, the rulers of the Dal Bet sent tribute of China, but it is remain independent. So hindi sila nagpaka ano dito. So from the next is the Chinese failed in attempts and the reconquer Vietnam in 1285. So the Mongols invaded Dal Viet. Prince Tran Quip Tone defeated them and become a hero. So from this trade influenced by Asia with the economic center of the Southeast Asia, and also the Indian and the Chinese influence spread from the Southeast Asia through the trade. So that's all, and thank you for watching, and God bless us all. Thank you.